Mara Hale stood at the edge of the crowded docking bay, eyes fixed on the swirling mass of ships as they maneuvered into their assigned berths. The metallic scent of coolant mixed with the acrid tang of engine exhaust hung heavy in the air. Around her, traders and mercenaries pushed through the throng, each wrapped in the garb of a dozen worlds. Mara's sharp gaze tracked a Tarkin squadron disembarking from their sleek, gunmetal cruiser. Their uniforms gleamed under the station's artificial lights, each bearing the distinct silver insignia of the Tarkin Imperial Vanguard. The Tarkin were hulking, scaled humanoids with reptilian eyes and ridged jaws that twisted in perpetual sneers. Their leader, Commander Zoth, towered over his squad. His crimson armor, etched with battle scars, reflected the station's flickering lights as he swaggered forward. Mara adjusted the hood of her coat, concealing her face but not her eyes. Her gaze remained fixed on Zoth. Mara clenched her jaw as she watched Zoth laugh, his deep, guttural voice echoing through the bay. He clapped one of his soldiers on the back, gesturing toward a nearby human technician struggling to unload a crate. "See that?" Zoth said, his voice booming. "Humans, so small, so fragile. And they think they belong out here." The Tarkin soldiers roared with laughter, their laughter a cacophony of snarls and hisses. Mara's fingers twitched beneath her cloak. There was a time when humans were spoken of with awe, their cunning and resilience feared across the galaxy. But that was before the Tarkin Empire had decimated Earth's colonies, crushing their resistance and branding them as insignificant. The humiliation still burned, and the sight of Zoth standing there, smug and unchallenged, only stoked the flame. Zoth's gaze swept the crowd, and his eyes landed on Mara. He smirked. "You there," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "Come here." Mara's muscles tensed, but she remained rooted in place. Around her, the crowd quieted, eyes darting between her and Zoth. "Didn't you hear me, human?" Zoth said, taking a step closer. "Or are your ears as weak as your bones?" Mara lifted her chin, meeting his gaze. Beneath the shadow of her hood, her eyes were ice. "I heard you." Zoth's smile widened, revealing sharp, polished teeth. "Good. Because I have a question." He leaned down, his breath hot and sour, close enough that Mara could see the scars tracing his jaw. "Tell me, how does it feel to know that your people are nothing more than prey?" Mara said nothing. Around her, the Tarkin soldiers loomed closer, their massive frames blotting out the light. "Are you deaf, human?" one of the soldiers sneered. "Commander Zoth asked you a question." Mara's eyes flicked to the soldier, then back to Zoth. "Maybe you should ask someone who's afraid of you." For a moment, the crowd held its breath. The air between them crackled with tension. Then, Zoth threw his head back and laughed. His soldiers followed suit, their laughter echoing through the bay like thunder. Mara's jaw clenched, her nails digging into her palms beneath her coat. The laughter reverberated inside her skull, dredging up memories she had fought to bury. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, eyes lifeless and staring at the Tarkin soldiers who had torn through his squad without mercy. Zoth straightened, his laughter dying to a low, contemptuous chuckle. "Humans. Always so brave with their words. But out here, words are nothing. Out here, you're just another prey animal waiting to be hunted." Mara met his gaze, unblinking. "We'll see." Zoth snorted and turned away, his soldiers following with sneering glances. The crowd dispersed, eager to avoid the attention of the Tarkin. But Mara remained, her fists trembling beneath her cloak. She watched as the Tarkin squadron moved deeper into the station, their laughter echoing long after they had disappeared from sight. Mara exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from her body. Her pulse thundered in her ears. The mocking faces of Zoth and his soldiers burned in her mind, twisting with the memory of her brother's lifeless eyes. She could still hear his voice, the last transmission before his squad was wiped out by Tarkin mercenaries. "They came out of nowhere, Mara," he had said, voice ragged with pain. They're hunting us for sport." Mara shook her head, forcing the memory away. The station's lights flickered, and the air hummed with the distant thrum of engines. She pulled her hood lower and moved quickly through the crowd, her boots striking the metal floor with purpose. Inside her quarters, Mara activated the terminal, eyes fixed on the holographic interface as it booted up. The screen illuminated her face, casting harsh shadows across her sharp features. Lines of text scrolled across the display, each bearing the same insignia, the Tarkin Imperial Vanguard. Mara's fingers danced over the console, pulling up data on Zotha's unit. Deployment schedules, patrol routes, tactical dossiers. The Tarkin were meticulous record keepers, their arrogance evident in how openly they flaunted their operations. Mara's eyes narrowed as she located Zotha's next assignment, a patrol mission on the desolate, lawless world of Drakkar 7. Isolated, inhospitable, and perfect for what she had in mind. Mara leaned back, her gaze fixed on Zotha's scowling, sneering face frozen on the display. "You think humans are prey, Zoth?" she muttered, a cold smile tugging at her lips. "Let's see how you feel when the hunt is turned on you." She shut off the terminal and stood, moving to the small storage locker embedded in the wall. Inside lay an arsenal of weaponry, each piece meticulously maintained, each weapon bearing the insignia of Earth's fallen colonies. Mara's hand hovered over a sleek, black pulse rifle before sliding to a wickedly curved blade, a hunting knife forged from Tarkin alloy, a trophy taken from her first kill. She weighed it in her hand, the metal cold against her skin. Her brother's face flashed again in her mind, his dying words echoing like a death knell. "Don't let them forget us, Mara. Make them remember." Mara sheathed the knife at her belt and slipped a compact plasma pistol into her boot. The station's lights dimmed as the artificial night cycle began, but Mara felt a fire building within her, burning hotter and brighter than ever before. She would find Zoth. She would remind him what it felt like to be hunted. And when she was done, the Tarkin would remember her name. Mara Hale. The human they should never have underestimated. Outside, the docking bay echoed with the sound of Tarkin laughter, but Mara no longer heard it. In her mind, she was already on Drakkar 7, already stalking her prey. And in that moment, the hunt had truly begun. Mara Hale stood in the dim, claustrophobic confines of her ship's armory, her hands moving with precision over the array of weapons laid out before her. The soft hum of the vessel's engines thrummed through the walls, a steady, rhythmic beat that echoed her own pulse. Outside, the star-flecked void loomed vast and endless, but Mara's focus was singular. Drakkar 7. The planet's holographic display hovered before her, rotating slowly, its surface a desolate wasteland of red dust and jagged canyons. A place where the Tarkin Empire conducted covert patrols, a place where bodies could disappear without a trace. Perfect. Mara sheathed a pair of curved daggers, their blades honed to a lethal edge, and slid them into the holsters at her thighs. The black tactical suit clung to her form, reinforced with lightweight plating designed to absorb blunt trauma. At her belt hung the hunting knife, its Tarkin alloy glinting with dark intent. She grabbed a compact pulse rifle, its barrel matte black and cold against her skin. Her gaze flicked to the countdown timer on the wall. 30 minutes until atmospheric entry. 30 minutes until the hunt began. Mara inhaled deeply, her mind steady and sharp, thoughts narrowed to a single objective. Isolate Zoth, dismantle his squad, and make him fear the very prey he once mocked. In the cockpit, the control panel glowed with data streams. The planet loomed larger, a crimson orb veiled in swirling dust storms. Automated transmissions crackled through the comms, Tarkin patrol frequencies interlaced with coded chatter. Mara's fingers danced over the controls, isolating the encryption algorithm. Tarkin soldiers were arrogant, but not stupid. They assumed no one was listening. Mara was. Static burst through the speakers, followed by a gruff voice. Unit Delta 3, report. Sector 7 sweep commencing. No hostiles detected. Mara's lips twitched. The voice was unmistakable. Zoth. She locked onto the signal, her eyes narrowing. Sector 7, she murmured. Perfect. The ship trembled as it broke through the planet's atmosphere, the hull shuddering as turbulence clawed at the exterior. Mara's hands tightened on the controls, eyes locked forward. The planet's surface rushed up to meet her, a wasteland of blood-red sand and blackened rock, ravaged by ceaseless storms. She landed the ship in a canyon, the rocky walls towering like ancient sentinels. The air was thick, a mix of metallic dust and acrid heat that stung the eyes and scorched the lungs. Mara donned a rebreather, the mask snug against her face, and exited the ship. Outside, the wind howled through the canyon, sending plumes of red dust spiraling through the air. Mara crouched, fingers tracing a set of fresh tracks in the sand, three-toed, deeply imprinted. Tarkin patrol boots. She rose, eyes scanning the horizon. The tracks led east, toward a series of jagged outcroppings that jutted from the ground like the broken teeth of some ancient, buried beast. Zoth was out there, somewhere amid the rocks, arrogant and unsuspecting. Mara moved swiftly, her steps soundless, her form a shadow amid the crimson dunes. The wind's howl masked her movements, a natural cloak that concealed her as she advanced. The outcroppings loomed closer, their sharp edges casting long, ominous shadows. A flicker of movement caught her eye, a Tarkin soldier, helmeted and armed, his rifle cradled against his chest. He was pacing near a boulder, eyes scanning the horizon, unaware of the predator stalking him. Mara's hand slipped to her thigh, fingers closing around the hilt of a dagger. In a single fluid motion, she was behind the soldier, blade pressed to the vulnerable gap beneath his jaw. His breath hitched, body tensing. "Where's Zoth?" she whispered, voice a lethal rasp. The Tarkin soldier's eyes bulged, his scales glistening with sweat. You're the human." Mara's grip tightened, the blade pricking skin. "Where is he?" A tremor ran through the soldier's body. "Eastern Ridge. He's setting up the recon post." Mara's blade flashed, swift and merciless. The soldier's body crumpled to the ground, eyes wide and unseeing, blood pooling beneath him and staining the sand a darker red. Mara knelt, fingers dipping into the blood. With a controlled stroke, she smeared a crimson handprint against the boulder, a symbol, a message. A warning. She rose, gaze fixed on the eastern ridge. Zoth was there, surrounded by his squad, no doubt barking orders with that arrogant sneer of his. Mara's jaw clenched. The wind roared louder, a primal, feral sound. It echoed in her ears as she pressed on, her path unwavering. The outcroppings closed in around her, the shadows deepening, the air growing colder. Mara crouched behind a rock, eyes narrowed as she surveyed the ridge. 4 Tarkin soldiers stood in a loose formation, weapons at the ready. And there, at the center, was Zoth. He was clad in his crimson armor, the same insignia emblazoned across his chest. His jaw moved as he barked orders, his eyes scanning the horizon with the false confidence of a predator who believes himself untouchable. Mara's pulse quickened. She took in the positioning. The 2 closest soldiers stood back to back, rifles aimed outward. The other 2 patrolled the perimeter, their movements slow and methodical. Zoth remained at the center, oblivious to the shadow that stalked him. Mara unholstered her pulse rifle, fingers tightening around the grip. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat a steady, controlled thud. She took aim at the closest soldier, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The pulse shot was silent, a flash of blue that struck the Tarkin soldier's neck. He dropped without a sound, body crumpling against the sand. The other soldier turned, eyes widening. Mara was already on him, blade flashing in a tight, controlled arc. The dagger sank into his throat, and he fell, blood pooling at his feet. 2 down. The remaining soldiers snapped to attention, weapons raised, eyes scanning the darkness. Zoth barked a command, voice harsh and urgent. "Fan out. Find the human." Mara melted back into the shadows, her movements swift and soundless. The wind howled, a relentless scream that drowned out the Tarkin soldiers' frantic shouts. She moved around them, circling, eyes fixed on Zoth as he paced, his confidence cracking, his eyes darting with mounting panic. Mara crouched behind a boulder, her gaze locked on Zotha's back. The knife in her hand felt like an extension of her own body, its weight reassuring. She could end it now, a quick strike to the spine, a single decisive blow. But no. That would be too easy. Instead, she drew a small device from her belt, a compact signal disruptor. She activated it, and the Tarkin soldiers' comms erupted in static, their voices crackling with garbled confusion. Zoth spun around, eyes wild. "Report. Delta 3, respond." Nothing but static. Mara watched, a slow, feral smile spreading across her lips. "Let them sweat. Let them fear. The wind howled louder, a deafening roar that swallowed Zotha's shouts. Above, the crimson sky darkened, clouds churning like a sea of blood. Mara remained crouched in the shadows, her eyes fixed on Zoth as he paced, his fists clenched, his face contorted with fury and fear. And then she moved, a shadow among shadows, a predator closing in on her prey. Zoth would learn. They all would. The hunt had only just begun. The crimson sky loomed heavy and ominous over the rocky outcroppings of Drakert 7, the wind shrieking through jagged cliffs like a chorus of phantoms. Mara crouched atop a boulder, her silhouette a dark specter against the blood-red horizon. Below, Zoth and his remaining 2 soldiers huddled in a tight formation, their eyes darting between shadow and stone. The arrogant commander was no longer barking orders. Now, he whispered frantically into a malfunctioning comm unit, static crackling back at him like a taunt. Delta 3, respond. Delta 4, report your positions. Nothing but white noise. Zotha's jaw clenched, a ripple of tension tightening the muscles in his scaled neck. The second Tarkin, a hulking brute with a shattered visor, glanced nervously at his commander. Commander, we need to regroup. This isn't right. Zotha's eyes burned with fury, but beneath the rage, a flicker of fear betrayed him. It's just one human. We are Tarkin Imperial Vanguard. We don't run from prey. Mara watched them, her body coiled like a predator poised to strike. Beneath her cloak, she tightened her grip on the pulse rifle, her eyes fixed on the Tarkin with the shattered visor. He was jumpy, his breathing ragged, sweat glistening beneath his cracked helmet. The weakest link. She moved, a silent shadow slipping from stone to stone, each step deliberate and measured. Below, Zoth continued to snarl orders, his voice growing more desperate with each barked command. Fan out. If you see anything, shoot to kill. The nervous soldier swallowed hard, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. Mara could almost taste his fear. It radiated from him like a palpable scent, sharp and acrid. She slipped behind a boulder, positioning herself directly in his line of sight. She could hear his ragged breaths, see the pulse in his throat beating like a frantic drum. Mara lifted a stone, its surface rough and cool against her palm. She hurled it to the left, where it struck another rock with a sharp, echoing clatter. The Tarkin's head snapped toward the sound, rifle raised, eyes wide. Commander, did you hear that? Zoth sneered. It's the wind, you coward. Hold your ground. But the soldier's eyes remained fixed on the darkened path where the stone had landed. His breaths quickened, and his grip on the rifle tightened. Mara moved swiftly, slipping from her cover and approaching the soldier from behind. Her blade gleamed in the dim light as she rose silently, a shadow among shadows. His body jolted when her hand clamped over his mouth, the knife slicing across his throat in one swift, merciless motion. Blood sprayed warm against her hand, and the Tarkin's body shuddered violently before going still. Mara lowered him to the ground, her eyes already fixed on Zoth. The commander spun around, eyes wild. Varric. Silence. Only the howling wind and the whisper of blood soaking into the sand. Zotha's remaining soldier, a wiry Tarkin with a jagged scar slicing through one eye, shifted uneasily. Commander, we need to fall back. Whatever this human is. Zotha's fist shot out, catching the soldier across the jaw with a resounding crack. Shut up. She's just one pathetic human. She can't take us both. Mara crouched in the shadows, her pulse rifle trained on the scarred Tarkin. He rubbed his jaw, eyes blazing with resentment, but he said nothing. Mara's lips quirked into a cold, predatory smile. Division. Fear. Perfect. She adjusted her aim, targeting the soldier's knee. The pulse rifle whined softly, and a bolt of blue energy lanced through the air, striking the Tarkin dead center. He screamed, his leg buckling as he collapsed to the ground. Zoth whirled around, eyes searching the rocks, pulse pistol raised. Show yourself. Mara said nothing. She remained crouched behind the boulder, her breath steady and controlled. Below, the injured Tarkin soldier clutched his smoking knee, his face twisted in pain. Zoth loomed over him, rage radiating from every pore. You pathetic waste of scales! Zoth snarled, grabbing the soldier by the collar and hauling him to his feet. Get up! The soldier whimpered, his leg quivering, unable to bear weight. Zotha's eyes darted across the canyon, nostrils flaring as he scanned the darkness. "Where are you?" he shouted, voice echoing through the canyon like a death knell. "Come out and face me, you cowardly human." Mara moved again, slipping behind a rock to Zotha's left. From here, she had a clear line of sight to his back. The hunting knife felt solid in her grip, its edge gleaming beneath the pale, artificial starlight. But she did not move to strike. Not yet. There was more fear to sow, more doubt to cultivate. Zotha's confidence was unraveling, his bluster giving way to the primal instinct to survive. She leaned against the rock, allowing her voice to carry through the canyon, low and mocking. "What's the matter, Zoth? You were so eager to hunt a human. But now it seems you're the one being hunted." Zoth spun, pulse pistol firing wildly into the darkness. Blue bolts of energy ricocheted off rocks, sizzling as they struck the ground. His breaths came in heavy, frantic pants, each exhale tinged with panic. Mara slipped to another position, her movements soundless, her eyes fixed on Zoth as he continued to fire blindly into the void. The remaining Tarkan soldier groaned, his leg twisted beneath him, eyes glassy with pain. "Show yourself!" Zoth roared, his pulse pistol trembling in his grip. Mara smiled, letting the silence stretch, letting the wind howl louder, letting Zotha's desperation fester. Then she spoke again, her voice echoing from all directions. "You shouldn't have underestimated us, Zoth. You shouldn't have underestimated me." Zotha's eyes widened, his chest heaving. His grip on the pulse pistol tightened, his knuckles white. Sweat dripped down his temples, and his jaw clenched so hard the muscles bulged. Mara moved again, positioning herself behind the injured Tarkan soldier. The man whimpered, eyes flicking to her, but he was too weak to cry out. Mara knelt beside him, her blade pressed to his throat. "Tell me, Tarkan," she whispered, her breath hot against his ear. "How does it feel to be the prey?" The Tarkan's eyes rolled back, his mouth opening in a weak, shuddering sob. Before he could utter another sound, Mara's blade sliced clean through his neck, the motion swift and silent. The body slumped to the ground, blood pooling beneath the sand. Zoth spun, eyes wild, pistol raised. "No." Mara stepped forward, emerging from the shadows, her gaze locked on Zoth. The canyon stretched behind her like a yawning abyss, the wind whipping her dark hair around her face. Zotha's pistol shook in his grip, his eyes darting between Mara and the lifeless body of his soldier. His chest heaved, his breaths shallow and ragged. "You're alone now, Zoth," Mara said, voice calm, deliberate. "It's just you and me." Zoth swallowed, his throat bobbing. The pistol wavered, but he raised it again, eyes blazing. "You think you're a hunter, human?" he spat, teeth bared. "You're nothing but prey with a gun." Mara's smile widened, cold and cruel. "Then come and hunt me." She stepped back, disappearing once more into the shadows. The wind howled, and the canyon seemed to close in tighter around Zoth, the rocks looming like hungry, watching eyes. Zotha's breaths echoed through the emptiness, each gasp more desperate than the last. His fingers clenched the pistol, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow, searching, waiting. But the only sound was the wind, and the only presence was the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, Mara Hale waited, her knife gleaming, her eyes fixed on her prey. The wind shrieked through the canyon like a chorus of vengeful spirits, its icy breath slicing through the air. Zoth stood alone amid the carnage, his crimson armor spattered with the blood of his fallen soldiers. His pulse pistol trembled in his grip, its barrel still smoking, but his eyes were no longer fierce with arrogant contempt. They were wide, wild, the eyes of a cornered animal. Mara Hale watched him from the shadows, her form concealed by a shroud of darkness. She was a phantom, her silhouette a mere ripple against the rocks. The canyon stretched around them, a labyrinth of jagged cliffs and yawning crevices, each echoing with the dying moans of Zotha's men. Zoth pivoted sharply, the pistol jerking toward every phantom sound, every imagined footfall. Sweat gleamed beneath his helmet, tracing the sharp lines of his jaw. He swallowed hard, throat bobbing, his breath escaping in ragged, uneven bursts. "Come out!" he bellowed, the words cracking beneath the weight of his desperation. "Face me, human. You want me? Here I am." Mara remained silent. The wind did the speaking for her, howling through the canyon like a predator savoring the scent of terrified prey. Xotha's pulse pistol trembled as he scanned the shadows. His heart hammered, each beat a deafening drum against his ribs. He had been a predator once, the hunter, the unchallenged terror of countless battlefields. But now, he felt the sharp, gut-churning terror of being hunted. Mara watched his every movement, her body coiled tight, muscles thrumming with deadly intent. The hunting knife felt warm against her palm, a familiar weight, its edge gleaming like a crescent moon. Xoth took another step forward, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. "You think this changes anything?" he roared, his voice hoarse. "You think one human can bring down a Tarkin commander?" Mara stepped forward, letting the light catch her just enough that Xoth could see her eyes, cold, unblinking, and devoid of mercy. Xotha's breath hitched, his pistol rising, finger twitching against the trigger. "You should have listened to your own men," Mara said, her voice low and lethal. "You should have run when you had the chance." Xoth fired, the pulse shot screaming through the air. Mara moved, a blur of darkness, slipping behind a boulder as the shot sizzled against stone. The blast echoed through the canyon, a sharp, deafening crack. Xotha's breaths came in short, frantic bursts. He spun around, pulse pistol raised, eyes darting to every shadow. Mara circled him, her movements fluid and soundless, every step measured, every breath controlled. She was a wraith, a shadow with eyes like twin blades, eyes that never left Xoth. "You talk a lot about prey," Mara said, her voice drifting from somewhere behind him. "But the thing about prey is, they learn. They adapt." Xoth whipped around, pulse pistol firing another shot. The blast ricocheted off a boulder, the light illuminating the canyon for a split second. But Mara was already gone. Xotha's chest heaved, his breaths raw and ragged. His mind spun with panic, his senses betraying him. Every shadow felt like it was moving, every whisper of wind sounded like her voice. Mara moved closer, slipping behind a boulder a mere 10 paces from Xoth. She watched him, her eyes fixed on his trembling hands, on the way his shoulders hunched as though bracing for a strike. "Your men begged," Mara said, her voice sharper now, closer. "They begged for mercy, just like my brother did." Xotha's eyes widened. He spun, pulse pistol firing 3 rapid shots. Each blast echoed like a cannon, lighting up the canyon in brief, blinding flashes. Mara moved through the darkness like a phantom, her steps soundless, her breaths calm and even. She was in control. Xoth was unraveling, every step, every breath, a descent deeper into fear. Mara crouched behind a jagged rock, eyes locked on Xotha's back. The commander's breaths were coming faster now, each exhale a desperate, ragged gasp. "You talk about humans like we're weak," Mara said, her voice a mere whisper, a ghostly echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "But you forget what we're capable of when we're pushed too far." Xoth whirled around, his eyes wild, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscles bulged. "You think you can scare me, human?" Mara stepped forward, emerging from the shadows, her blade glinting like a shard of ice. "I don't need to scare you, Xoth. I just need to finish you." Xoth roared, charging forward, pulse pistol blazing. The blasts tore through the air, scorching the rocks as Mara weaved through the onslaught, her movements swift and fluid. Xoth swung wildly, his blows erratic, fueled by desperation rather than precision. Mara slipped beneath his arm, her blade flashing as it slashed across his wrist. Blood sprayed in a crimson arc, and the pulse pistol tumbled from Xotha's grasp, clattering against the rocks. Xoth staggered back, clutching his bleeding wrist. His eyes blazed with fury, but beneath it was something far more satisfying to Mara. Fear. Mara advanced, blade gleaming, each step slow and deliberate. "You underestimated me. You underestimated all of us." Xoth bared his teeth, his jaw tight with defiance. You think this makes you strong? Killing me? You're still just prey. Mara stopped a mere foot from him, her eyes boring into his, her blade poised at his throat. I'm not killing you, she said, voice cold and calm. Not yet. Zotha's eyes widened, and for the first time, Mara saw real terror in them. The kind of terror that comes from realizing that the hunter has become the hunted. Mara grabbed Zoth by the collar, slamming him against the rock wall. Dust rained down, and Zoth groaned, his eyes rolling back. Mara's knife hovered inches from his throat, the blade gleaming with Tarkan blood. You're going to go back to your people, Mara said, her voice a low, dangerous growl. You're going to tell them what happened here. You're going to tell them that one human hunted you down, tore through your men, and left you alive to carry the message. Zoth swallowed, his throat bobbing against the blade's edge. Sweat poured down his temples, his breaths ragged and shallow. What message? Mara leaned closer, her eyes burning like twin stars. We're not prey. We never were. She slammed the hilt of the knife against Zotha's temple, and he crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The canyon fell silent, the wind a low, mournful howl that swept through the rocks like a funeral dirge. Mara stood over Zotha's prone form, her breaths coming in slow, controlled exhales. The knife trembled in her hand, the blade stained with blood and sand. She could end it now, one strike, one decisive blow. But that wasn't the plan. Mara knelt, dipping her fingers in Zotha's blood. With deliberate strokes, she painted a crimson handprint across his chest, the same symbol she had left on every one of his fallen soldiers. The mark of a human. The mark of the hunted. Mara rose, the wind whipping her hair around her face, her eyes fixed on the darkening sky. Somewhere in the distance, the distant rumble of a Tarkan cruiser echoed through the canyon. Reinforcements, perhaps. A search party. Mara turned, slipping back into the shadows, her form vanishing like a specter into the night. Behind her, Zoth lay sprawled in the sand, blood pooling beneath him, the crimson handprint stark against his chest, a symbol, a warning, a promise. Mara moved swiftly, her steps sure, her mind clear. The hunt was over. But the war had just begun.